Everybody, we're here once again for a second episode of the Corner Blue. I'm Andres Rico.
And I'm Hugo Alvarado.
And the Hunger Games are set to begin. CONCACAF finally had its draw today for the pre-qualifying rounds for the World Cup. Yes, they took the sixth spot away from us, but now we know what the bumpy or unbumpy road might be for us. Hugo, can you tell us what the draw was for us? Who's in the group with us?
Yeah, so we are in Group A with Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, Montserrat, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So some of those teams we played recently. So we have a recent.
Could have been worse, but we didn't run into Guatemala. We didn't have to run into Nicaragua. That's kind of, given us a little bit of trouble recently. And yeah, we'll see how this goes. I mean, yeah, you can be upset about the fact that we didn't get that sixth place, but the truth of the matter is, I don't think CONCACAF knew what they were doing when they started this with the whole ranking system. It was just too arbitrary, where the points that you gained for winning it just seemed very arbitrary. Not just your typical 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, something that is just very reasonable. You can't mess with it. It's just there. But I think all we can do is look forward and see how this goes.
I think I made my point very clear in other videos that I made that I was quite upset about CONCACAF's decision to change the format and El Salvador being the most affected national team of all. But if we focus on the positive, I do think that this pre-qualifying round can serve as a casting for De Los Cobos for players. We're just still in the COVID-19. There's no league in El Salvador, so who knows what the physical condition of the players is. And I think this could be a great opportunity for the players to kind of get back into playing rhythm and get in good shape by playing competitive games, because we are playing towards that World Cup, but playing against national teams that I think we have a pretty good shot at being first place in that group.
Seeing how the team has reacted going to the smaller islands and dealing with the logistics when it comes to that, it hasn't been anything easy. The games, let's be honest, were cringeworthy. The offense wasn't necessarily didn't get going on the matches. It was late winners or just, dragged out results. So we'll see how this team adapts. And I totally agree with you with the concept of that. Yeah, I think this benefits El Salvador in a way that we may not see right now, since we're still digesting the fact that the sixth place was taken away. De Los Cobos can do that casting. He can continue with this process of figuring out who fits in or not. You've had injuries to Joaquin Rivas that kept him out of the last game, so we had one fewer attacker. We've had Dennis Pineda that has not been playing, and then also we don't know what happened in the – I think it was Montserrat, but we don't know why he hasn't been called up either. It's just coinciding. Nelson Bonilla, he asked not to play. He seems to want to return. He needs to get those minutes before he's even taken into consideration, and at least De Los Cobos dealt with that question from sources in El Salvador today. But yeah, I think this is a blessing in disguise, in the sense that if these games actually happen, because there's an uncertainty because of the pandemic, if they happen, now you have something to actually play for, something concrete, those 3 points that didn't exist before, So I think moving forward, this is something definitely positive, that if we would have gotten that sixth spot, great, we're in the last round. But the problem is, then what do you do between now and when those matches are actually played, which wouldn't be till next year, right? I think, isn't it until October of next year? So imagine La Selecta would have played its last match in the beginning of 2020 and wouldn't have any serious matches until next year in October. And knowing how management handles stuff, it could have been a disaster where the friendlies the wrong rivals, or they don't happen, or there is an agreement with the league to lend its players. Now we have a mapped out, scripted path to get to the octagonal, the last round, and I think there's nothing wrong about it. I think this is definitely a blessing in disguise.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that with all the different changes in format that CONCACAF has been implementing lately, because we're not just talking about the most recent change, but even the qualifiers, like you said, to the World Cup, were decided by the FIFA ranking based on the CONCACAF Nations League. So I think for the players, it was also a different mindset.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
not
it's
playing for the 3 points. You're
exactly, you're not
busting
playing for the
out
three
some
points.
some algorithm or something made up by who knows who. I mean, we kind of have an idea who's behind this, but I mean, come on now, those 3 points. If you know what you're playing for, I mean, it's night and day.
Exactly. So that's the great benefit of where we are now with the groups, that we know what we're playing for. We know what we need to do to get those 3 points and win that first place, and it's just a clearer path compared to the past. And I think a lot of the players in our national team have struggled with that mindset. You know, with as we know, we've seen this in the past where we play a game against a small island, and we play terrible, and then we play against the US, or we play against Mexico, and we play better. I mean, we might end up getting slaughtered at the end, but in some occasions we actually played very good matches against the big teams. And I think that that's that's one of the areas that obviously our players need to improve on, which is the mentality, and approach every game as a very serious game, never underestimating your rivals. And I think we've done a lot of that.
We're good.
And
We're good in the underdog role. That's what's clear.
right,
Is if once we stray away from it, you tend to see it, whether it's in the all UNCAF tournaments or the Copa Centroamericana, where you'd think, oh, we have a squad to go up on Belize like it's nothing, or we have the squad to, breeze by Nicaragua or even Guatemala. And Guatemala has, our number. Like, every single time we play them, it's either a tie or they beat us. So it's just weird how, yes, this team flourishes throughout the generations as an underdog. And I think finally there has to be some change in mentality where, you know what, we do have the manpower or the ability to just run certain teams over, not by underestimating them, but let's focus on they have to focus on their own style of playing and their own system and working it out, working all the kinks out. I just think too, like the logistics influence and the CONCACAF madness has influence, but I think things are pretty straight clear. If you want this, it's within your power. I think that's the main thing that's clear, that it's not up to whoever has a calculator and is trying to figure out what the ranking is. Now you're in a group, it's concrete, go for it, no excuses.
exactly. And when you say that, what I'm reminded of is, that game back in probably 2009 or 2008, when we beat Anguilla by 12 goals, I think, something like that.
And
It was
the
like a
Carrito Umaña celebration.
exactly. So, some people see results like that, and I've heard commentators saying, that's disrespectful that you score so many goals. It goes like against the
It's
I
an
can't
unwritten
remember.
rule, like
Yeah,
a code.
exactly. And to me, it's like, no, that's not the case. That's when you have to show that you're taking the games seriously.
Hmm.
You're definitely playing against a team that is way below your level, and you take the game seriously, and you score 12 goals, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And I want to see more of that. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to score 12 goals against these teams,
Hmm.
but I like to see the games being approached with that intensity of imagine that you have So I keep going back to Mexico and the U.S. I mean, those are the two powers
Those
in
are
the
the
area.
reference points. Yep.
Exactly. So approach those games as if you're playing against one of those teams, and let's go and score some goals and build the momentum so that we can get to that octagonal and be in good shape, both in the style of play and also the mentality to be there, to
And
be in to feel strong that we can make it. Because when I look at who we're gonna be matched against, Group F, you know, I look at Group F, and most people think Trinidad and Tobago is gonna be the one who we're gonna play against. And I look at that group, and honestly, I think that Group F is probably the most competitive um, group of all, because I think Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Puerto Rico can actually compete against each other and fight for that first place. So I'm not putting it in writing yet that we're going to play against Trinidad. I think it could be Guyana, or even Puerto Rico. But
that's very gracious of you, because
yeah,
I totally think it's going to be Trinidad at the end.
and we know Trinidad has been a tough one for us
Hmm.
historically. I
Yeah.
mean, within the last 10 years, um, 10, 15 years, it has not been easy for us
No.
to beat them.
Anytime we go to the Caribbean, I mean, with the exception of Haiti in a couple of matches, but for the most part, yeah, the Caribbean just messes us up. Um, there's the typical excuse of the the bio makeup of players, and that they're strong physically, this and that, and but the truth is there's this broad spectrum of obviously countries that do take the sport serious, that their national teams do consist of professionals, whether they're in third, second division in countries in Europe, but the key is that, yeah, there are some that do take it serious. And then you have the ones that their population is so tiny that it's really hard for them and to even have a league. And so you have that wide spectrum. I just think our players need to figure out where they fit in their own spectrum and not worry about who they're playing against, because I think sometimes they show up thinking they've already won, or they're going on vacation and they're enjoying the sights when they got to get those points. And I think more than anything, the players need to be held accountable in that sense, and also the coach and how he handles a situation of you win those points at the end of 90 minutes, not before. And you have to steamroll people. You have to scare people. You have to show respect, because even today, checking Twitter, the U.S. is already counting that they're opening versus Trinidad in the octagonal. They already that's what's on their mind right now. And how many times have we seen Isabella dismissed, rightfully so, in certain occasions, but you know, they need to make a statement. It's being handed to them on a silver platter in a sense. Yeah, it sucks that they're gonna have to take certain trips uh to all these exotic locations and whatnot, and the logistics behind it's probably gonna suck as well. But the 3 points from each rival, they're there. You got to take them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that we should focus on what we can do as a team. We may not be the strongest, uh, physically speaking, or the tallest, and but if you look at Spain, Spain, the won the World Cup in 2010. They had developed a style of play that was best suited for them. And I do trust, that De Los Cobos has that. I remember in his first shot with the national team for the 2010 World Cup. I remember, how we started, and when we play against Denmark's U23, or it was like a combine of young Danish players.
Yeah, because it was their winter and they needed to get away.
Right.
Hmm.
So I remember those early games with De Los Cobos. It was mostly just passing the ball in the back line. passing the ball around and not really much attack, playing it safe. And De Los Cobos kind of built from the defense up. And towards the end of the hexagonal, we played pretty amazing matches. I think he had found the right players for his style, and we were actually a pretty competitive team back in 2009. I mean, we messed up with the U.S. When we were winning. I think we were up by 2 at El Cuscatlan, and then I think we ended up tying that
Yeah,
match.
when El Mulo acted the fool that he was injured and all the shady shit.
Right. So I think that De Los Cobos, although this second time around, just speaking my personal opinion, I haven't really liked the way we're playing with De Los Cobos the second time around. But I trust that he knows where he stands. He knows how things are managed in El Salvador, which is a positive thing because you may take the best coach in the world, but they get over there and then they're gonna be gone in less than a
They're
week.
not going to put up with, certain idiosyncrasies or cultural idiosyncrasies, to
Exactly.
put it
So
politely.
right. So that's a positive. That's the positive side of having a coach like De Los Cobos. It's his second time around. He knows what he's dealing with, and I think that just needs to find the right players. And I think some of those players are coming up. They're showing up like Portillo. A player that I didn't even think
Yeah,
that he
I
he
didn't
could
know.
be
Yeah.
national team material, but there you're seeing him, and we saw that.
And
I don't
he's
know if you
good.
want to
He's
speak
good
a little.
about that. Yeah, no, like
Exactly.
it's hard not to compare. Obviously, both tenures. You look at the first one. He basically inherited a team where a year before or 2 years before, uh, what was his name? Cabañero had called up a 14-year-old. Like, are you
Yeah,
kidding me? Like,
Tovar. I remember his last
there
name
were
was Tovar. Yeah.
yeah, there was all these gimmicks. I mean, it was unfortunate that they took the team that won the medal in the Central American Caribbean Games. Things didn't go well for Paredes. They wiped him out, and they wiped that whole generation out for a while. But De Los Cobos came, and he brought all those players back in. Like Ramon Sanchez, Pacheco, all those guys. They had been basically erased from the team at that point. I mean, well, Caballero did use him for a Copa CONCACAF, but the main point is he basically took that generation and then kept doing scouting in the most obscure of places, and we ended up with players like Fito. We ended up with players like Cristian Castillo that had not been in the radar, had not played in any of the youth teams up until that point. But you look at the amount of players that he brought in, and yeah, he had that space or those games to experiment where it didn't necessarily count. And then even once qualifiers started, for example, the infamous series with Panama, a lot of those guys did not end up on the final roster during the hexagonal because it was this continuous revolving door of players. But fortunately, he was able to put all those pieces together. Now you fast forward, he has the pitches that he would complain about that he didn't have to practice. There's an infrastructure that, albeit it isn't great, but it exists. And before, they would have to go rent fields at random places just to train, or the teams wouldn't lend their players out. So he's had all the tools. He's had the support of the federation because he basically was their firefighter. So you hope that he's able to use all these tools, and now that he has even more time, that you trust that this guy's good at looking for like those diamonds in a rough, so to speak, because we don't necessarily have a league where you have all this talent that's just ready to start to get the ball rolling. No, it's their their progress tends to be truncated due to just the modus operandi of the teams. So a lot of the players, the younger players, aren't ready. But hopefully this time around, he's able to continue with this casting. I hope, and he's proven to have done it because there's been pieces that have come and gone. But I think he has all the tools to hopefully make it through. There's no excuse.
Yeah, yeah, I think that he's definitely, he doesn't necessarily have all the tools, but it's much better than where he was back in the 2010 qualifiers. Where, yeah, you're right. I remember
They didn't
hotels had
have
to
a
be rented.
sponsor. They didn't even
Yeah,
have a sponsor for the uniform. I remember they played with two.
yeah,
The Copa UNCAF that El Salvador hosted, they had two different kit sponsors. Like
right,
just things like that. Just all this crazy stuff.
right. Yeah, I think that we're definitely in that sense we're in a better place. And yeah, I also I'm looking forward to some new faces. Hopefully, I mean keeping the base that we currently have of like the Dominguez in the center back. I mean he's young and he's strong. He's pretty good. I think Mancia was doing a very good job until I think he got injured. Um, Left back, I think we have a lot of good options in the left back at this time. Not so much in the right back position until we fully get um, Tamakas back from his injury. I know he's back, but who knows in what conditions he is.
Ibsen Castro's held his own, but yeah, you'd want a little more of a dynamic player that can move up and down the flank,
Right.
and be a part of the attack. Because I feel like he kind of gets caught off guard way too much, or he can't support on the right side as someone like Tamakas could,
Yeah. And with definitely like always up front, we need another Fito.
or
Uh,
or a younger version of him. Because
exactly. That's what I'm saying. We need another Fito, a
yeah,
younger Fito. We know that Fito hasn't necessarily been performing the best lately. He's has been, probably the best forward in recent years. But if you look at his numbers outside of El Salvador, he hasn't really done much, and he's been bouncing from one team to another. So that tells you a lot.
yeah, I think it would have been to his benefit to have stayed put in and of a sense, rather than going abroad and basically not getting too many minutes.
Right. And we also have the young, some not so young Salvadorian Americans, and other players that that I have brought up, and hopefully some of those can be called at some point. I'm talking the Eric Zabaletas, Enrico Hernandez from Vitesse. Although he's young, I think he has a lot of potential. Eric Zabaleta, we definitely know he has many years under his belt in MLS. He's no young player anymore. He's 28, I think. He just turned 28. So I'm hoping to see some of those faces as well.
Yeah, I was listening to De Los Cobos interview today with the guys at Los Provocadores, and they were talking to him about that, and he was taking questions specifically on certain players that have been brought up to be called up, and he mentioned that there's with some, since their status, their migration status or their passport status isn't necessarily defined, that it's kind of out of his hands, or whether they're eligible to be called. It's kind of out of his hands. And then also they mentioned that that there's just some players that haven't necessarily been ready to commit. So who knows what if they're what's on the players' minds, or if there's just been a lack of communication and whatnot. But yeah, hopefully the whole casting process continues. I think our midfield is stacked, and that's something that's more or less been the sense the last few qualifying processes or rounds, is that we have plenty of options in the middle. Maybe not necessarily like super tall, fast defensive midfielders, but we have guys that are physical, get the ball, and they can start playing from the back, and hopefully we can take advantage of that. And that he's banked on that up to a point with the style of play. But again, just like what happened with his previous tenure, where he would play with five in the middle, it's
Yeah,
like we need something a little more offensive. It's just those pieces still aren't there.
yeah, yeah. And the big one is a true number 10, a Cheo Quintanilla type of player. I think that we have yet to find a player with those characteristics.
Yeah, just someone that can take the ball, start distributing, control the rhythm, pace of a game, and just create space and magic when you need them, you know. And we have a lot of good midfielders, but their functions aren't that. I think it's more of a classical, or it's not, it's more of a modern function of being box to box and being able to counter, touch the ball around in the middle and then play it wide. But we don't have someone that classic 10. I mean, hardly any team has it nowadays, but we really do lack someone that can be the brain of the team and get
Yeah.
things going.
Yeah, I'm still hopeful. I thought at some point that Mayen could be the one to fill that spot. Um, and we'll see how that goes. I think that there's also the young guy from Coca, Diego Coca.
Hmm.
I think could also be another player with potential. He's getting more minutes in the league,
Hmm.
so and he's been called
Yep.
into camp a couple of times. So hopefully, we can see some of those youngsters as well.
Yeah, definitely. Also, like, the duo of Narciso Orellana and Marvin Monterrosa in the middle. I think Marvin's actually stepped up in the absence of a player like Mayen. We saw him, how he managed himself in the matches with Alianza. He did a lot of controlling of the pace. He wasn't afraid to take on players one on one and then set up plays. And hopefully that translates. Unfortunately for all these guys, all their momentum's been chopped off because of this pandemic. But I think Monterrosa was definitely emerging as you know pretty close to the go-to guy to get the ball and start an attack.
Yeah, yeah, that duo has definitely been very solid in our midfield. I don't think there's going to change much
Yeah.
for the upcoming games. I mean, we have our first opening game will be on October 8th against Granada in El Cuscatlan, and following one will be against Montserrat on the 11th of October. Um, so
Yeah, and the
they're
crazy
around
thing
the
is,
corner.
are these matches even going to be played? Like, I'd find it super hilarious if somehow CONCACAF would have to like scratch this and then come out with their third attempt at creating a format. Like, that would be hilarious to me. Would not surprise me at all, because I do think it is a little precipitated. Like, yeah, Europe has the logistics to get it going. I mean, the US has, but considering the numbers here, it's surprising that sports are have gotten the green light in general. So it will be interesting how they manage the logistics, because again, there's a big spectrum of countries that have a certain level of logistics or can handle it versus ones that don't. So it'll be interesting what comes of this, if these games even happen.
Right. Still a big question mark there.
No, and another factor I think that plays out is very interesting when you compare De Los Cobos' tenure now with his first one, is there was so much apathy when it came to La Selecta back in, what was it, 2007, right? Am I wrong? Or 2006? 2006.
Hmm.
There was so much apathy at that point. I remember I was in El Salvador, I was at a bar, and it was a night of his debut versus Panama in a friendly. And all I remember was there was a TV on, and it was some random TV station. No one was watching it. It was just on. So I asked the bartender if he could turn the game on. He's like, "Oh, they're playing? Okay." He just looked at me weird, like, "That's random that you're asking me to put this game on." So he starts clicking away at the channels, and he can't find it. And he's like, hasta la tele es antiluce. And I'm like, "Oh, dang, okay." So I'm the weird one trying to watch the game. Anyway, but that showed the amount of apathy that existed, because at that point, yeah, we were coming off of two qualifying rounds where we had been disqualified, mayhem, the Argentino calling up a 14-year-old, that type of stuff. And yeah, no one cared. And it's interesting that now you compare it to now, he was that unifying factor. He got people excited about the national team when there was so much apathy, that now he's dealing almost with the consequences of it, because now he has almost more pressure than he did back then, in the sense that people haven't been happy, not necessarily about the results. I'd say like the main result that everyone was pissed off about was the Bermuda match. But other than that, people have not been happy with the style.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if we go back to 2006, we were not playing for anything. We Cavagnaro, he brought up that 14-year-old who wasn't even playing semi-pro.
And
He
then that
just
the one
he.
game that in the Copa CONCACAF against Costa Rica, that it was Santos Rivera got a red card.
Hmm.
Then Misael came in, got a red card, and so Pacheco ended up playing goalie,
Go.
and,
Yeah.
and we were up 1-0. We ended up losing that match. Like, it was
Yeah,
the worst.
it was a
Horrible
mess. No,
times.
nobody believed in the team,
Yeah.
and if you remember, once De Los Cobos left, and he it was like a very emotional goodbye back then. I remember like media, like ESPN, saying things like, prior to De Los Cobos, El Salvador was okay, El Salvador, and then El Salvador became La Selecta. Like everyone knew La Selecta.
Outside of El Salvador and outside of
Exact,
like fans,
exactly. And then he kind of started building a brand, and we were no longer that easy team. It was like going to El Cusca was gonna be pretty tough for most teams. So yes, coming from all of those failures, and then De Los Cobos came in, and he basically made a lot of people believers again. And I mean, if I'm speaking, from my, that's when I got involved with the level that I'm involved now. It was during, like in the middle of De Los Cobos' first round with El Salvador is when I started Selecta Talents. I got a lot more involved, but the expectations change. And then if you look at coaches that follow De Los Cobos, they built on what he had done, with a few exceptions there. They were like Juan de Dios Castillo, rest in peace. To me, that was like one of the worst decisions ever made in El Salvador. And then you bring El Primitivo. It was like
Okay. After
it's just
Roca, that brought this level of legitimacy
exactly.
to a team that we hadn't had since De Los Cobos.
Well, let's not forget Ruben Israel, because Ruben Israel was kind of like the direct build up to what
Yeah,
DLC De Los Cobos did, and he kind of had the same players, and
but his
and
heart
Ruben
wasn't
Israel.
in it. His heart wasn't in it. I it was a good process. Some good results were achieved, but yeah, you just the way that he left, you could tell that either things were going horribly with the federation to the point that he was looking for other options to get the hell out of there, but it seemed that he looked for whatever excuse to leave. It just seemed like he wasn't in it.
Yeah,
But I do agree with you. Those teams were, it was a build up. You'd see that, okay, we're moving past the level or the bar that was set by the Los Cobos. You saw a progression.
exactly. And then then right after that, that's when things went south with Juan de Dios Castillo and El Primitivo, and then we had the suspension from the match fixing, and we basically lost an entire generation. We lost an entire generation. That's part of the reason why I also give so much credit to Roca, because Roca came in when we didn't have a national
Yeah,
team.
it was, clean slate, who's eligible, and let's go play Spain. Like that was his first match, was
Yeah,
was playing against Spain, I remember.
yeah, and we had a one of the best styles of play that I've seen La Selecta play, and it was unfortunate, what happened to him. But continuing on the subject of De Los Cobos, yes, the expectation is very, very different now.
I think part of it too is, so he's seeing the fruit of what he sowed, right? Of
Mhm.
getting people interested in the team, or the results creating interest for casual fans, diehard fans, whatever you call them, or people that just didn't care. He made the team accessible, or something to root for. Now he's dealing with the fact that people do care, and that's why he's getting that pushback. But on top of that, I think the main thing is that the negative aspect of it is in the context that he was brought here. You know, Lara had a team that was very frontal, very compact, got nice results. He basically made the team available to whoever was doing well at the time and needed to be on the team. And that's something that people weren't agreeing with at that time. But he opened it up, and it worked out for him. Unfortunately, due to the usual shenanigans that happened at the Federation, he left. And so by him kind of being the shield for the Federation, I think people resented it. They thought that the Federation thought that people were going to receive this guy with open arms, like it was the grand return of the prodigal son, whatnot.
Yeah.
But it just coincided that his style is very different to the frontal style of Lara, and people have resented that up to a point, especially when you see the shaky, iffy results against teams that you could consider as inferior. Before we close, I just wanted to give a shout out to Hugo Serrano, the creator of Nil War. Thinking about you, Hugo, I know you're going through some health issues, and you've had some crowdfunding efforts to help you with that. I decided to buy a tee because this video is pretty funny of La Costa. Viejo, cuídate mucho, mucha suerte, y gracias por los videos. Well, I think we should definitely wrap up with that. Definitely thank you for all the support. Little by little, this thing's going to grow. Hopefully you can help us spread the word by telling your friends, family, liking, subscribing, following. We're at The Corner Blue on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. You can listen to us on Spotify or watch us on YouTube. All the links will be around and whatnot. But thank you so much for the support. This was an episode on the fly due to the newsworthiness of the draw. We definitely look forward to announcing our first guest ever in our upcoming episode. And Hugo, do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just appreciate everyone for the support. You know, we really love doing what we're doing, and we love seeing, you know, the following starting to build up, and we're looking forward to some very interesting guests in the near future. So thank you so much for supporting us and following us.
So buckle up, people. The ride's about to start again, if it gets started. But it should be a fun one, and we'll see where it takes us. So have a good one and take it easy.